So I agreed to do this presentation, albeit reluctantly at first, but I've learned not to refuse someone who's actually tried out for the Washington Capitals, Patrick. He's got elbows and persuasive, but anyway, I didn't know what I didn't really know about the topic. I did know that I liked black and white photos, and I knew they were monochrome, but I was keen to learn more. So here I am today, and I did learn more actually. So if Patrick or the whatever presidents ask you to um, present something, even if you're not overly familiar with the topic, as I wasn't, just say yes because you'll learn a lot. So that would be my first little message. But as he was asking me, I did recall and I've been intrigued by our group's discussion for the last couple of years that I've been here on Ansel Adams and his great photographer, black and white photographer. And he also was a great developer of his prints. So both a gifted photographer and then became sort of a premier guy in the darkroom, and then combining these two things brought him to his photos to a new level, and that kind of stuck in my head as I said yes to this, and I thought maybe there's a way I could work some of that into the presentation and learn there. And additionally, I knew that Bev and I were headed to San Francisco in November to the DeYoung Museum to see Paul McCartney's mostly black and white photos at an exhibition. And so there was that too. And I thought, well, that maybe that's something I could work in here. And finally, having been inspired by Adams and McCartney, I went out to the most inspiring place on earth, Saskatchewan in Canada. And I took some pictures that I thought I would try to weave into this presentation as well to show you what I learned along the way, and hopefully that'll be useful. But before I start, who here has dabbled in monochrome or black and white photography? Excellent. That's the first time Bev hasn't put up her hand today so far.
Oh, how are you waiting to go?
Oh yeah. Patrick promised me I could say next slide, please, but then he gave me this stupid button here. Okay. So this is an overview of what I want to talk about. I'll spend a little bit of time talking about monochrome photography, what it is, and hint it's not just black and white. And we'll look at three key concepts about monochrome photography: tonal range, light and shadow, and contrast. But I'm really not going to, delve into the technical parts too much. I'm going to kind of go light there. I think we've heard enough on scanning the free Epson something for technical for today. We'll look at then some of the work of Paul McCartney from 1963 and also from Ansel Adams, and show you how they both use monochrome to tell very powerful stories. Then I'll show you a few of my own photographs and tell you what I've learned, and hopefully that's good and useful to you. All right. So what is monochrome photography? Monochrome photography is photography where each position on an image can show a different amount of light, but not a different color. So a monochrome photograph shows only variations in one color. Mono equals one, chrome equals color, monochrome. Most monochrome photos today are black and white, and black and white photos are technically hues of gray. Other colors besides gray can be used to create a monochrome photograph. Sepia tones, I think, were among the first to be used in the 1800s. And they're sort of an orangey brown color. So for today's presentation, I'm going to focus on black and white. That sound okay?
Yep. Good.
Next slide, please. Okay. I'm bringing back not only the dinosaurs, but the Cretaceous period of giving presentations when you got to say, next slide, please, to take a little break in your thought. Can't do that anymore. There's a great song you all know by Paul Simon, Kodachrome. And I don't know if you recall the complete song, but in it, there's a line that says, everything looks worse in black and white. And to that line, I say, Paul, what's that you say? I say, Mama, don't take my Kodachrome or monochrome away, especially after developing this presentation. There is a point to that slide, and really it's that color. While many people think it's better, we'll see today that black and white photographs have their own strength and sometimes are maybe arguably better than color in some situations. And some of the most emotionally powerful photographs ever taken are monochrome. Think of war photographs, portraits, and some landscapes that are eternal. So today we'll learn the monochrome tool. All right. So the slide on the left is the only photo that our family has of my grandfather Bill and his first wife Jean. This photo was taken in 1910 in a little town in Saskatchewan, and there's going to be a theme there. And it's the only photo that we have of Jean, and I sincerely appreciate that we possess this photo. And this is why photography, and especially durable formats like black and white, are so important. The single image is the only visual record we have of her. We wouldn't know what she looked like if it wasn't for this photo. So does anyone here have an old photo of a relative that they would ever throw out? Don't put up your hand.
I think we all have.
I guess my point is they're important. Street scene on the right is a modern photo, but it's got a sepia treatment. I just pulled this off the web, but it's to give it sort of a nostalgic effect. So black and white photos can feel timeless. They could belong to any year. Is this photo taken in 1910 or 1925? And it's hard to tell. And that's kind of the point. Any guesses where this photo was taken?
Actually.
That'd be my guess.
Yeah.
That'd be my guess.
It's on the same homestead that my grandfather, I guess my grandfather and my grandmother's homestead. These Clydesdale horses have actually been in my cousin's family for over 100 years or something like that. He's got a bunch of them. And I took this picture last November. This horse was running towards me. It was freezing cold, and it was difficult to get a picture. And the light at this point, 10 o'clock in the morning, was really not good. And the picture didn't really look good in color, but I think in black and white, it looks a little better. So for a guy that doesn't like to get up too early, I think it's worthwhile to consider that sometimes black and white photos can give you the gift of a midday golden hour. In other words, when the lighting isn't necessarily good for color, sometimes black and white can be a nice shot. So that's a neat thing. The very first permanent photo was monochromatic, and and help me if I'm wrong here with this. I know some of you folks have a better sense of the history. But I believe it was 1820, but that didn't seem long enough to me, but that's what I've learned. And it utilized the processing technology of the day. So back then, that's all they had. So they had monochrome. But even after color was, technologies came into existence, great photographers like Ansel Adams and amateur photographers like Paul McCartney stuck with black and white. And that's what they chose to do for their purposes. Well, I wonder why they did that. All right, with some trepidation, I'm going to mention a few technical things. This stuff is not my cup of tea, but I think we've all developed our own sense of what makes a good photograph. And tonal range means how many shades gray appear in the photo from pure black to pure white. So if you look at this photo, which I took off the web, it's got bright skies, light tones, gray lake, mid-tones, and a dark sort of sneaky island, dark tones. So these are all tones, and nice black and white shots like this show a full range of show a full tonal range. So the picture feels complete and is interesting. This one isn't so hard for me. Light is the bright part of a photo. I get that part. Light is the bright part of the photo. And shadows are the dark parts. See, even for a geologist, okay, I get that concept. I go back to, it's important to know that we all do have a good sense, I think, of what makes a good photograph. But sometimes the technical parts on these things I've learned going through this actually that I do think about my black and white images more now that I've learned these contexts. But anyway, soft light makes things look gentle. Strong light makes things look sharp. Either is better. Portrait might benefit from soft light, and an architectural shot like this might demand hard light. If you look at this photo, you can see how the shadows create a sense of depth. You can tell which pillars are in front and which are behind just from the shadows, and that person in the background gives a sense of scale. Now, contrast is the difference between the darkest blacks and the brightest whites in your photo. High contrast means very bright whites next to very dark blacks. This can create a sort of a dramatic, bold feeling like this image. Low contrast means lots of grays, and that can create a soft, subtle feeling. There's no right or wrong on any of these. It's just the different tools that you can use. All right. So, seeing these principles in action, but not becoming a critic. But we're going to see two very different photographers. Paul McCartney took many photos in the 1960s when the Beatles were just getting going. He wasn't trying to be a photographer initially. He was just documenting the life, the frantic life he was leading with the Beatles at that time. He took thousands of shots and stored them away and didn't think much about them. After many decades, these 1,000 photos were discovered, but actually they were never really lost. They were carefully archived and stored. Paul McCartney gave these photos to the National Portrait Gallery in London, and they transformed Paul's work into an exhibition and a publication in 2023. The exhibition has moved to other cities, including New York, Toronto, Nashville, San Francisco, which I mentioned, and it's going to other cities. It's extremely popular. The photography exhibition has also been captured in a wonderful book, Paul McCartney, 1964, Eyes of the Storm. And I've got a copy of the book here. that I bought at the exhibit, and we'll just leave it if you want to look at it later. It's just full of beautiful pictures. The 250 pictures in his exhibition. I'll leave it here. That at that exhibit, give you a sense of it, I believe we heard that combining all the cities, there was over 200,000 people that have gone through the exhibit. All right. So a few years ago, Bev and I went to a Paul McCartney concert in Vancouver. And before the show began on a big screen, Paul McCartney put his telephone number so you could send a text to him before the show. And so I did that along with 30,000 other fans, and I didn't get a response that day, but some people did. Anyway, I think his team uses those phone numbers for promotional kind of contact lists after the fact. And so I get periodic text messages from Paul. And I respond faithfully to every one of his text messages. And I have for years. When he was when he was promoting his book, 1964 Eyes of the Storm, and his show in London, I wrote back to him, as I always do. And in my note, I thanked him for taking the photos, for printing them, and for sharing them. And I said something to the effect of, I hope you still do that. I hope you still take photos. I hope you still print them, and I hope you still share them. And as I was writing out this text, this little squirrel jumped on my windowsill and grabbed the peanut that I had left for him. Can you see that? He's having a little peanut. And he was admiring the ceramic mouse that I also left for him, which is on the inside of the house, so that I thought that mouse might attract him as well. So I had the phone in my hand, and because I was texting Paul, and I took the picture, and along with my note to Paul, I sent the picture. And I think the picture caught the eye of Paul McCartney's team. And anyway, a little while later, I got a text back, I'm going to say from Paul. And it was a very thoughtful text about his love of photography. And I think you can read there, the truth is, I've always been interested in photography. From the time I was very young, when our family owned a little pocket camera in the 50s, I used to love the whole process of loading Kodak film into our Brownie camera, and on and on. And I was kind of gobsmacked by that. I'm not sure Paul McCartney himself wrote the text, but I'm pretty sure that he told someone what to write. So that felt kind of neat, and it was very inspiring to me. So the exhibit. In 1962, the Beatles had released their first single, Love Me Do. And by 1964, they were world phenoms. And the 250 photos in the book captured 3 pivotal months in the Beatles' existence through images not of the press, but one of their own. And that's very important because it was the Beatles' perspective of what they were going through, not an outsider's perspective of the Beatles. These exhibition photos, it's just off my phone, took these, show the gallery experience, people enjoying McCartney's photographs, mesmerized. I would say. Resure. It was great. The technology of his Pentax camera allowed for spontaneity.
You got a good camera.
He did have the camera, but he wasn't.
How many people in here have
It wasn't a camera. He could shoot shots quickly and move with the pace of the Beatles, and that was the trick. And at the time, there was something called the snapshot aesthetic that sort of celebrated imperfection in camera in photos. And so at that stage of his photography development, it was really a good thing for Paul. He just fit right into that. So I mentioned, and you saw right from his own text messages to me that his interest in photography dates back to his childhood and his found his Kodak Brownie box camera. With the Beatles, he was surrounded by photographers and he learned a great deal from them. McCartney described himself only as an enthusiastic photographer who happened to be in the right moment at the right time. And today he's a skilled and prolific photographer. So this is my favorite photo. It's McCartney's self-portrait. And it's also probably the most popular photo in the exhibit, and call this the original selfie. And I have a copy of I purchased a copy of the print, and if that could you? So please have a look at that after the presentation. It's really something. It's hard to not stare at it. Now, looking back at his photos today, McCartney wouldn't change a thing. In his words about his photos at the time, some of them were soft, and I could say, well, I wish I'd taken a bit more time to focus them up, but we didn't have that time. And so, I'd say to that 200,000 people can't be wrong. He got really good with his little Pentax, by the way. He kept that for a long time. So skipping along, hopefully all these concepts will fit together at the end with a great grand conclusion. We're going to jump from Paul McCartney to Ansel Adams. Neil gave fantastic travelogue in December about Alberta's Rockies. But did you know he wasn't the first great photographer to go there? In 1928, a young Ansel Adams was brought as a volunteer photographer to the Sierra Club's high trip to Jasper National Park and the adjacent Mount Robson Provincial Park in British Columbia. This was the one and only photographic expedition that he ever made outside of the United States. And he nailed it. So Adams was not only a great technical photographer, but I mentioned he was also a master in the darkroom, and he pioneered that effective combination. He was, by artistic choice, black and white photographer. So, trip to Canada. He set out with a group, 130 some odd people in the Sierra Club, set out by train from San Francisco and undertook an amazing month-long journey. Look at this itinerary from San Francisco, and some from LA, but mostly they started in San Francisco with a single train to Vancouver, through the Fraser River Canyon, settling in Tonkin Valley and Jasper, the Ramparts, Amethyst Lakes, Mount Robson in BC, Burke Lake at the base of Mount Robson, etc., and then back out through Prince Rupert and the Inside Passage, which is sort of along the coast of BC, and then back home. So Ansel Adams had with him his 2 Corona View cameras. And help me out with this, Glenn. The F64.
F64 club people.
Right, and I did check, and these cameras are F64. At least one of them was. So kind of a special camera, a big clunky thing. Cost of the trip was $225. Which that's nothing in Canadian dollars. Guess what? It was $225 back in 2028 in Canadian too. But anyway.
You know that it's like 4x5 or bigger.
Yeah. One camera was 4x5, a small one, and one was 6.5 by 8.5 inch. Ansel Adams' expenses were covered, but he wasn't paid on this trip. Incidentally, at the end of the trip, he made a at cost sort of compendium of all his photos for anyone who was interested on the trip. And there's only one copy of that known to exist today. From my research, so they were in Jasper and BC, and they were in the Jasper area for a month, 130 of them. And they summited at least 5 peaks. Not all of them, but their group. And that includes Mount Robson, which, for those of you who know, is a technical climb. It is not an easy thing. I only know one person that's climbed Mount Robson. Oh, and he was an expert climber. But they managed to find their way up on some of these peaks. In 1928, Mount Robson wasn't even climbed until the first climb was 1910. Fit people. So, Adams and his mates, which were both men and women, 120 of them, 130 of them, they were no slouches. This is a letter from Adams to his wife, Virginia, and he wrote this while he was in Jasper. And he says, "These mountains are breathtaking, utterly different than anything you've seen. The peaks and force and tone fulfill almost every ideal I've had of what my mountains could be. These are the great mountains we dream about." And note that Adams talks about tone in his letter. He was thinking about light and dark and how that would translate to his photographs. So really, both Bev and I, but I grew up and played and studied and worked in these very same mountains. But the way that I look now at these mountains is completely different. And I'm pretty sure the way I take photographs in the future of these mountains will change. And I do have a book here that you can look at and borrow, that he has Ansel Adams in the Canadian Rockies. It's filled with beautiful pictures of Jasper and Mount Robson National Provincial Park. I mentioned that he produced a book after his trip, and the interesting thing is he also worked on the negatives from his trip for at least 35 more years, which is, to me, I found that incredible. Gives me hope in my learning process, which is agonizingly slow through Lightroom Classic. I've only been at it for a year and a half. Ansel Adams was at these photographs for more than 35 years. he would make new prints, adjusting development times, adjusting paper choices, dodging and burning in each print. So each print then was like a new interpretation of the original negative. And I understand from Glenn that he has a museum in Yosemite and that many of his prints are exhibited there. And I would love to go there and I would love to see if there's any of the Canadian shots there. And Patrick was telling me that his negatives are now donated to the University of Arizona.
Yeah, that was interesting. Right after he donated them, he was interviewed by a journalist, and the journalist asked him, he said, "Aren't you worried that giving these negatives to all these kids is going to destroy the value of all your prints?" He said, "No, that's the reason I gave it to them. If they think all I did was put it in the enlarger and hit print, that's not what I did." Which, and one of the things we do today, and I mean, every burn he did, he had to develop, take a look at it. And that was too much, too little. We go, hey, no, too much, too little. I mean, that's like 3 seconds, 2 seconds. He had to spend a minute or so in between each trial. And, it's just a different concept.
Brad, back in the 70s, Ansel Adams and some other extremely famous photographers had a gallery where you could buy prints and they'd show them and all of that in Carmel, California. Do you know if that still exists?
I don't think so. I've got one. I
It
didn't.
still exists, but not a lot in Yosemite. You said I mentioned Yosemite. There's not a lot of Ansel Adams prints anymore. Most of his prints is original that be sold to private people or are in museums. So even in these galleries now, you see very little back for it.
Back in
Everyone ever got to see his original, not from a book,
right.
but an original. It's amazing.
Back in the 70s, you could buy some of his prints for $750 or $1,000 to all of it.
The last one I saw print of his was $750,000.
I missed my opportunity.
Yeah, I went to that in Carmel by the Sea. He lived in Carmel, and he personally went there all the time. I went into that studio, whatever you want to call it, and he wasn't there that day, or at least at that time. But I got one of his books that he had personally signed. So that to me is the thing in the national park is not the same as the Carmel was much better. I've been to both, and the Carmel one is really his thought
You can
process.
see the original work, and you can buy computer replication, duplication, but they'll always work for $25. That's doesn't even come close to the original.
Well, you know, at what point in time you started using his zone technique and spot metering and all of that stuff, but
That was back in the 30s.
in the 30s.
Yeah, I studied the zone system, and I mean, talk about a complete system. It wasn't, I mean, the concept that he's mentioned, that he really looked, it should have a white and a black, at least in your negative, and maybe not in your print. But if your negative wasn't full tonal range, then obviously your print couldn't be. So it started with exposure, making sure you expose right, that you use the right film, that you develop it properly. And then you get in, now what do you do with it? Yeah. It's
Jeff would have loved it. There's a lot of algorithms associated.
There's a couple of excellent books and I did buy them on Ansel Adams and the print and Ansel Adams on the negative. If you really want to get into the technical stuff. For me, I just felt happy that a lot of his tools now, we can kind of figure some of these things out in Lightroom Classic, for example. So you're not in a gungy darkroom. So that gave me hope. And the other thing I wanted to say before I moved on here, this photo, to me, this is Mount Robson. You never see the top of Mount Robson. It's always got that cloud covered. Well, you do see it occasionally. Maybe I've seen it, the top of Mount Robson once or twice in my life. So it's always like that. So that was a very striking photograph, and talk about the perfect tonal range, even in the book. And I realized that that photo isn't like one of his original prints, but it's still spectacular.
What would have done if you had rum?
I only wish he was texting me. That's what I said. Because I respond faithfully
You
to
don't want
everyone.
to actually right.
Yeah.
It's a real slow read.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so, we were camping near Mount Robson in September. And, that's in Jasper, and this is, in Whistler, which is in the burned area that Neil showed in December. And I took this shot of this poor lonely burnt tree in the campground. In this case, I kept the photo in its original color format. Neil showed slides from the exact same area, and he very effectively showed some of the burnt area in black and white, and showing both the damage and the recovery of the forest. And I thought they were really tremendous. So, the point is, whether it's Kodachrome or monochrome, they both tell stories. And sometimes, at least for me at this stage in my photography, it's difficult without seeing it to know whether I want the image to be in color or black and white. But both are good, and it depends on what story you want to tell. So, two photographers, two very different approaches, where Paul McCartney was spontaneous, Ansel Adams was deliberate. And where McCartney accepted imperfection, Ansel Adams pursued it relentlessly. Both are valid, and both created powerful images. So, I think that was an inspiring thing for me to go through after Patrick asked me to consider preparing this presentation. And so I wanted to go out and practice, and then I wanted to show you what I came up with. And there's plenty of ways to practice monochrome photography. I think you can do it on your phone. I've never tried it, but you can definitely do it on your camera. And in my practice project, I shot in color, in RAW, on my Sony A7 II, and then I used Lightroom Classic to edit them into black and white. And I'm new to using Lightroom Classic. So everything that I've learned has come from our club. So you're seeing the first shots that I've ever converted to black and white in this presentation. The last time I took black and white shots was when I had a little plastic black and white photo camera as a kid. So I'm happy with the results, and if I can do this, I figure that all of us can figure out ways to work with monochrome photography. Sounds like many of you already done that. So, pitching into my Saskatchewan safari, how to take a shot in black and white. Being shoot in RAW, and I learned this only last week, not in JPEG, because when you translate the data to processing like Lightroom Classic, the color part of the data doesn't translate. Another consideration is to set your camera in black and white so you can see the view in black and white. And I actually couldn't figure out how to set my camera that way. So the pictures I took, my camera was looking, the image that I could see was in color. But it was shown to me that all you have to do is ask Google. And you just ask Google how to set my Sony A7 II to monochrome. And so whatever camera you have, you can do that and it'll work its way through and tell you how to do that. And I think it's good because it helps train your eye. If you can actually see the image in black and white before you take the photo, it gives you a sense. Is that my timer?
No,
So Brad, I have a question. I think what you're saying is you want to actually take the picture color, but you want to see it before you take it in black and white. Is that correct?
Well, yes, and it's a consideration, and it's something, to be honest, I haven't done yet,
no,
but it makes
that
sense.
wasn't what he was saying. No, I don't think it was.
The opposite.
It is to take your camera and set your camera to black and white.
No, but Patrick, from what I understand, and then Jeff or whomever may correct me, is if you want the very best ability to process in black and white, you want the picture taken in color.
Yes.
Okay,
Well, first of all,
that's why you use RAW. RAW is all the information.
Right,
Your viewfinder is set to black and white so you can train your eye. And the JPEG on the back of your camera is black and white.
I just want.
But the sensor recording is, and that's why you do it raw. That's why you do it raw.
the black and white is a great way to learn photography, the shadows.
Right, that's the whole thing, right?
yeah. So to see it in your camera before you take it, I think that's.
It makes a
And just
difference.
On that piece, we went to the Alcadon's Dunes weeks ago. Did anyone have their cameras preset the viewfinder in black and white? No, neither did I. Do you think it would have made a difference in your photographs?
Lens crappy.
Yeah, really good light it might.
Yeah, maybe it might next time we go. If it's sunny, you might want to just try for a little bit to see what it might look like in black and white. Just an idea. And then of course use Lightroom to process your pictures from RAW and turn it into black and white.
So let me ask you a question. Do you think using black and white film today will give you better time control and length on a digital camera?
Yes. There is a brand new camera today, just came out by Pentax. This came out last year, just black and white. We have a black and white sensor on it.
But it's still digital.
It was,
It's still digital. It's not film.
But they're all bringing out
Just black and
film
white.
cameras again.
Yeah, we're bringing it from. Yeah, Pentax bought a new film. They're owning Pentax to this.
Back me up for a moment. Why wouldn't you set your camera at JPEG and RAW? Since you're saying that your image on back your camera is going to be in black and white in a JPEG.
What you see on your viewfinder is a small J.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what you're looking at. So that's well, what Brad is saying is to take your pictures in RAW. That means you get all the color things, and you want all the colors, even when you're going to convert to black and white. So you can adjust the color tones.
But why would you set?
Why take two?
Why take that?
You got everything in one.
Yeah.
And the big difference is if you actually set your camera to black and white and you set it to JPEG, the colors are gone.
Yeah.
They're gone.
Yeah.
Versus with the raw side, you got all the colors there. And when you start using the filters on your colors, they don't work.
Yeah, the only difference between that and astrophotography, if you're looking at a nebula, all those cameras are black and white. The only way you get the colors.
And they add the color, but we're not talking. But the bottom line is, if you just take a black and white JPEG, you can't really process it other than what you've got. You can't adjust the color to the background.
But I'm trying still to understand why you wouldn't. shoot.
Why do people like to put black and white or the JPEG on the back of the camera and see the black and white? You can train your eyes to look for it. Because looking at a picture that's color is kind of, you say, wow, look at all that great color. As soon as you take the color away, you get a flat picture something. We should love to.
Yeah.
With a black and white, you're looking for contrast, you're looking for different types of things, you're looking for textures. You're looking for different types of things in black and white, in my.
Yeah, when you have, for instance, a green forest with some sunset lighting some of the background in kind of a red, and then a blue sky still behind it. And you look at that in color, yeah, it looks really great. Look at it in black and white. It's horrible because it's all the same color. So,
These, so the conversations that we've just had are exactly the great kind of conversations that, like when the group would speak to Ansel Adams, so. I got a lot out of that, and I just got a lot out of this conversation. And that's the great thing about our camera club is these kind of conversations that we get in sort of helping me reinforce my discussion here. So thanks, that was excellent. I learned a bit. This is a screenshot that Patrick gave me, and this is the Lightroom Classic, and I think the thing here is in this case, Patrick's gone down to adaptive black and white. And so you don't want to immediately remove all your color. You want to get into, I actually started color Adobe and then pick adaptive black and white or pick monochrome and then use your tools from that point. And away you go. So I took these two shots on our with my, I guess call him my cousin Lionel on our great grandparents' homestead. This was the same time as a Clydesdale horse. And he took me on a safari across what's now his land, 9,000 acres of this beautiful rolling, sometimes in flat, other times land. So backtracking just a bit, Tom and Glenn and Patrick got me set up with Lightroom Classic last season. And Glenn has suggested that I watch numerous videos. The one that really struck me that was fantastic was a guy named Pi Jirsa. I don't know if you guys have heard of him.
Yep.
He's with Adorama TV. So he's got an excellent 7-step program on black and white edits that I recommend. Anyway, the photo on the left, Glenn worked me through this photo and he edited it and he did his dodging and burning and showed me the different techniques. And well, as I say, he did all of the processing to show me how to use Lightroom Classic for black and white edits. And then the photo on the right, the telephone lines, he said, okay, this is now your shot. You go away and just use the methodologies that you've learned on YouTube and what I've showed you. Just make this photo look like you want it to look like. And I did that. And I was really pleased with the results. And for both of these photographs, honestly, in color, they didn't look that sharp. The light had washed them out and they just didn't look that good. But I think in black and white, it really sort of made the landscapes look more eternal to me and more dramatic. So I was really pleased with that. All right, I'm not an expert at all, an expert in photography, but I think monochrome is a valuable tool. And we've seen that two great photographers had two very different approaches. Both are valid and both are inspiring. And I think all of us fit somewhere on the spectrum between sort of Adam's deliberateness and McCartney's spontaneity, somewhere in there. So easy peasy for us then to be inspired maybe by both of them or one of them. And again, that conditions that might be bad in color can be excellent for monochrome. Save a photograph. Talked a lot about shooting in RAW, setting the camera in black and white. And also now we can escape the dreaded darkroom. I remember my brother having this miserable darkroom in our basement in our house, and not a place that I would like to hang out, but now we don't need to. We can use Lightroom Classic. What you saw from Adams and McCartney in spades was take pictures, shoot pictures, use the technology that's available, process those prints, print them and show them. I mean, those two guys showed that in spades, and their photos are still totally relevant today. The last bit is there's lots of really available expertise in this club. And so if you're newer to this club or newer to any of this, I've found it's incredible how you can just pick up the phone and almost anyone will help you. So in conclusion, I went to my local McBain's camera store in Edmonton just a little while ago, and I asked them about black and white photography, and he took me to this. They still have a little display where they sell black and white film. And I asked him about it, and he said, we have a great display of black and white film, but they don't sell any of it. They don't sell a lot. They do sell some, he said, but he said it's still a very popular thing. Black and white photography is very popular. It's just that people don't use film in cameras, black and white cameras. They use digital cameras and processing technologies like Lightroom Classic. So anyway, if monochrome isn't in your toolbox yet, I hope that you might consider it in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, notice there, I don't see a Kodak label in there. So just in case anybody else is as kind of as nerdy as I am sometimes, I spent an hour and a half watching it was released last week, a new documentary on Kodak. The company that management killed is the title, which is, for those that don't know, he invented film photography.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it was after his life, they invented the digital camera, had all the patents for it, said, keep them secret, and we'll just keep selling film. And that worked through the 90s. And then they had like 92% of US film and like 89% of the world film. I mean, talk about a monopoly. They'd had it, and then nothing left. Anyhow, it was pretty amazing. But the processing that went on in the late 1800s, you literally had to have a truck. So
Filter is still
yeah, some of these companies are still around because there still is black and white. Just Kodak's not around. So yeah.
I thought, it was black and white. I took a photography class. And at the time, I was able to take a black and white photo, but isolate one thing in color. And I didn't know if anybody had tried that. It was the coolest thing. I had a yellow umbrella. The rest of the photo was black and white. It's really cool.
It is a compact thing.
Is it? It's small.
And if you do, and Lake Festival that Pat mentioned earlier today, they have a black and white division. And in the black and white division, you are allowed to leave one item in your color.
Yeah, it's one of those techniques that kind of it comes in and goes. It comes in and goes.
Stick on with it.
Yeah, right now it's kind of out of style, but it has been in, and it can be extremely effective. And the time I see it most often is some advertisements. They'll take the item that you want to get your eye to focus on, color. Everything else is grayed out, black and white.